Hiya guys and welcome back to the Average Pundits podcast, your home of all things Premier League. Christmas special for you today. We have the mid-season Premier League review and I am joined by the boys from Nothing But Football, a brand new little football kind of podcast radio show to listen to over on YouTube. I've got Alex Smith. We've got Alex Smith, Average Pundits veteran. You may recognise him before. And we've got Alfie Lambert as well. How you doing, boys?
Yeah, not bad, you?
Not too bad at all.
Not bad, mate.
Not too bad. We've got a lot to talk about with the Premier League this season. Obviously, we're probably living through one of the weirdest times to be a fan of top-flight football ever. You know, with a global pandemic on, with all teams seemingly in great form one minute, terrible form the next. So, without further ado, I think we'll jump straight into it. So, we'll start off with at the top of the alphabetical list. We've got Arsenal. Alfie, I'll come to you, mate. Yeah. Avid Arsenal fan, sport journalism student. I'm sure you spoke about Arsenal quite a lot this season. If we're summing it up early on, what are your initial thoughts of how the season's gone so far for Mikel's Army?
I mean, I think the only word really to describe it so far is probably diabolical. Obviously, last win being at Old Trafford, first day of November. Which I thought obviously was a good result, especially when you consider how they've sort of bounced back and got into form from it. But I mean, the game's gone by. It's just there's a complete lack of creativity. Like I say, Williams constantly getting in the squad and sub performing, and we just don't look like scoring. I mean, defensively, I have to say, I genuinely think we sort of have improved. I just think the midfield and going forward has just been, like I say, atrocious. But I mean, I'm sure Alex will back me up. We've had to sit and watch enough games with me this season.
Obviously living together, me and Alfie watch, I watch Arsenal quite a lot with Alfie, and I've got, growing up, my first season watching football was the season Jose first went to Chelsea, and before that season, Arsenal were probably second to Manchester United as the best team in the league. This is without a doubt, with all of us, the worst Arsenal team in our living memory, probably our parents' living memory. I don't know. Mikel Arteta, I think if he hadn't have won the FA Cup, he probably wouldn't have a job now. That's my opinion. I don't get the decision to. I know he earns a lot of money, but I don't get the decision to just banish Mesut Ozil from the squad. I think he's probably not what he was, but I think he's a lot better than what they've got on the pitch at the minute. But the thing is, if they sack Arteta, do they just go through this circle again? They bring in a new manager, improve like they did under Unai Emery, like they got a bounce when Arteta come in. It's just going to be a bit of a circle. I don't know where Arsenal go from here. I really don't.
It's a really weird situation, isn't it? I mean, Mesut Ozil, that's a situation we spoke about quite a few times on the podcast. It's a lot of issues, I think, behind the scenes, and it's a bit of a one that none of the fans and the players and the team and the manager, like everyone kind of has their own different accordance of events, and you hear little snippets from all around. But he's certainly a player which Arsenal may have missed. It's the creativity, I feel, which is where Arsenal are particularly struggling. I don't know if you agree with that, Alfie.
Yeah, I think a lot of Arsenal fans are sort of got like a short memory. I think watching him the last couple of seasons, like I say, he's not been nowhere near what he was five seasons ago, 6 seasons ago. But he can't be much worse than what we've got currently. I mean, he's even tried playing Lacazette in that role, which fair play, he did well against, I think, Mulder in the Europa League. But I mean, they're not the sort of teams you're coming up against in the Premier League. And he like I say, he's a forward, not that sort of number 10 role, which Ozil is. And plays so well like we have seen in the few seasons. So I think to say that he's not in the Premier League squad because of footballing reasons, I think there is something behind it. Whether he's fallen out with the manager, whether it's political, I mean, I don't look too much into it. But I just don't know. Like Alex said, I don't know where we go from here. You can't keep sacking managers over and over again. I think you've got to let Arteta be backed. You say he's brought in 2 big players in Partey and Gabriel. Gabriel's been our player of the season so far by a mile.
Yeah.
And like I say with Partey, I mean, he'd only missed something stupid like 4 games through injury at Atletico, and he's missed more with us so far. And I mean, he's a big miss. Like I say, Old Trafford, man at match for me, and we've really missed him in midfield. I mean, Xhaka is. I defended him under Arteta. I thought he'd improved a bit, but I mean, now, especially against Burnley, cost us the game there with an absolutely stupid decision. I mean, and that's what he's known for at Arsenal, and he will be known for, really. I don't think Sabas has been good enough. El Neni put in that performance, like I say, at Old Trafford, and give us false hope. But since then, he's been poor. And like I say, I mean, that just is the word to sum up the season, really poor in all areas, really.
I think there's a lot of sticklers around in the team which have kind of exceeded their kind of shelf life at Arsenal. They've been around for quite a while. It was at the start of the season, I think we on the Average Pundits voted, I think me and Reece were both in conjunction with Willian as one of our, if not our worst signing of the season in terms of the long haul. And we did a collaboration with the guys over at Total Sport. If you haven't seen that, it's over on our YouTube. Go check that out. But Alex, I mean, if we look at Willian, the signing, a Premier League veteran, a good servant to Chelsea over the years, a very, solid player. But at that age, on a 2-year deal on the contract, what do you reckon the thought process was there as the marquee signing?
Well, I was completely baffled when they gave him the contract that they did. You'd have thought with Chelsea not giving it him, why would Arsenal go and do that? I don't know. Like when he first signed, I thought he'd be not a good, I don't know how to describe it, a useful signing. I thought he'd have his moments. But I remember I watched, was it Fulham you played first game in the season, Alfie?
Yeah, where he got the hat-trick of assists.
I remember watching that with you, and I thought, he might be all right here, but he's done nothing since that. I just think he's come to Arsenal and he's just there to pick up a wage, to be honest. A very good one by the sounds of it as well.
Yeah, it sounds like, I mean, it was just, I remember looking at it. I saw the interest at first and I was thinking, oh, okay, like I don't doubt anything's going to come through with this. But, he's in the club at the moment and you can only hope, I guess, for the Arsenal fans that he comes in and he provides something. We know he's got the creative outlet. We know he's also got firepower. When he reaches the form, he's obviously got competition on that right with Pepe, who's, again, kind of not really hit the full potential at Arsenal. But, I think the second half of the season is going to be a real test because right now, the conversation everyone's throwing around the term is Arsenal in the relegation battle. And I don't know how I feel about it on face. It's something that we have touched on. But, Alfie, relegation battle, is that harsh? Or do you reckon? Because I personally can't see them going down, but they're definitely in the lower half of the table. That's undeniable.
I think you've sort of got to call it in a relegation battle. I say with us being down there. I mean, Burnley, I think it's their worst start to a Premier League season. They've got a game in hand with us, and if they win that game in hand, they're above us. So you definitely have to say it is a relegation battle, I suppose. But like I said, I don't think. I hope we don't go down. You really can't see like a team that's got players such as like Aubameyang, Leno, Gabriel, all these like sort of star players. Really, you can't see them going down. But
I don't think you'll go down. But you have got to call it a relegation battle. That's what it is. If everyone's writing Leicester off to win the league all those years ago, you can't write Arsenal off for getting relegated. I don't think you'll get relegated, but I'm not. You're not big enough. You're not too big to get relegated, if that makes any sense.
Well, exactly. But no, we were saying, I think sort of it might be sort of a good thing. I think for the club, sort of realising that we were. It definitely makes me appreciate the last years under Wenger. Him scraping top four with some absolutely bang average sides, and it does make you look back and think you take it for granted. But it might be like a sort of a wake up call for the club. Doing so poorly. I mean, we were on about looking at Chelsea the other year. They were so poor. Mourinho obviously got sacked. I think they finished 10th that season. And then they bounce back the next year. They have a year out of European football, which I think, to be honest, would probably be best for us. I mean, playing Thursdays isn't ideal when you've obviously you've got to travel back. The Friday, it don't give you much time to prepare for the weekend games. So, and I mean, like watching Europa League games, especially the group stage ones, they're absolutely dire.
Yeah, it's a competition that I've found United in quite a few times over the last few years. I don't think anyone really enjoys it that much. But Arsenal, definitely a club to watch in the second half of the Premier League season. We'll move on to Aston Villa. Alex, I'll start with you for Villa. As a a guy from the Midlands, I'm sure you know plenty of
Oh
Villa fans,
yes.
and I think a few of them have a tendency to get under the skin occasionally. But Aston Villa, I mean, how would you assess their start to the Prem so far?
No, they've been very good. Not something I particularly enjoy saying, but they've been excellent. I'll give them that. I think the signings they made in the summer, they've worked. I think they've got a likeable manager. I'll give them that. A very good captain and focal point in Jack Grealish. The only thing I could probably say about Villa is their home form could improve. They've won 2, which was against Sheffield United, and that ridiculous game against Liverpool. So I think if they improve on that home form, I think they'll probably finish in the top 10.
Yeah, I don't think I can disagree there. I mean, definitely at the moment they are looking like a real good Premier League side. It wasn't too long though. I mean, obviously with the struggles last season, they come up to the Premier League spending 100 million, looking a bit lost. Where's that money gone? Jack Grealish obviously being the standout player, and kind of everyone expecting Grealish to go. And it was a whole thing over the summer, and everyone was waiting for it, and it ends up with a 5-year deal. Alfie, retaining a captain, a leader, a talent like Jack Grealish, do you feel like that has been the undeniable kind of push for Villa to be doing so well this season?
Oh, 100%. I think a club like Villa keeping a player like Jack Grealish is massive. I mean, I think he's one of the, well, if not the player of the season so far. And he's just a joy to watch. Like I say, should have been playing for England. Obviously, finally got his role in the team. And I mean, he's proved why he should be in there. And like I say, for Villa, he's just been sensational this season. I mean, he's already hit, I think he's got 11 goals and assists so far this season. And like I say, he's just brilliant. He drives at people. He scores goals. He makes chances. He's just like the player that you'd want in your team. And I mean, like I say, as a captain, like Alex was saying, he's just been brilliant for Villa so far.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. Alex, Grealish, again, it's hard not to move away from Grealish. Obviously, he is the main man at Aston Villa. Aside from amazing performances on the pitch, not going into too many details, but he is definitely a big name in the red top papers.
Yeah.
Do you think Grealish's kind of so-called party boy lifestyle is kind of like actions during the coronavirus pandemic? Do you feel like this is going to be a common occurrence in his career going forward, or do you feel like it's kind of just one of those things with a player at that age, that kind of money, that lifestyle?
He's how old is he? I'm not too sure myself.
About 25, is he?
25.
He's a young lad. He's just been given a massive 5-year contract in the summer. He'll mature with age as a person and as a footballer. I think it's just one of them things that happens. I'm sure if there wasn't a pandemic going on at the minute, you probably wouldn't hear too much about it. Okay, it's irresponsible, but I think, like I say, I think with time he'll just mature, and I think he'll snap out of it.
Yeah, I think you touched on it there. I think during times of crisis, obviously there hasn't been too much news other than, the odd sport result when sport's allowed to be played, and obviously the coronavirus. So whenever anything like that leads, it definitely does lead in a big way. But Aston Villa overall, I think we can all agree, a really good start to the Premier League season. Very interesting to see how they continue, and maybe they might sign someone in January. I'll still start with you on this one, Alfie. Brighton,
Yeah.
Again, a team for me, I've quite enjoyed watching Brighton this season. I don't know about you. There's been pockets of players in that team which have been absolutely brilliant to watch in my own eyes. I'm not sure how you felt so far about Brighton.
Yeah, I think they've really been unlucky this season. You look to sort of, especially the Man United game was a big one. Obviously, Trossard I think he hit both posts in the bar. I think Solly March hit the bar. Obviously, there was a penalty after full time, which was legally given, but controversial to say the least. But no, they've got a good manager, I think, in Graham Potter. He's got them playing good football, and like I say, unlucky at times. I was going to move on to the Liverpool game. We watched the Liverpool game. Obviously, Morpay missed the penalty to take the lead, and they did miss a few chances. And I think that's sort of going to be what lets them down this season. Not being clinical when they're on top of games, not taking the chances. And I think, so, like say the Liverpool game, they got the penalty in I think the 93rd minute, which sort of saved it for them. But they shouldn't be leaving it that late. They should be taking the penalty. It's a poor penalty from Morpay, and he's come off injured straight after it. And like I say, taking these chances while they're on top, especially when they're so, I don't think their league position sort of reflects the way they've been playing this season. Like I say, enjoyable to watch at times, but like I say, they've got to take these chances so they start picking up more results.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think a lot of times you could say they definitely have been hard done by. Obviously, the penalty shot against United was one that it's a scenario, like you said, legally given, but one that we haven't seen. You know, I can't even think of a time where we have seen anything as controversial as that. And I think that probably so far stands out as one of the most controversial Premier League moments this season. Going back to talking about some of the players, one player which has stood out for me in particular is Lamptey at right back. Obviously, a player signed from Chelsea, part of the kind of generation of Chelsea players which possibly go under the radar and, you know, kind of more of a Chelsea success story, I say, an escapee which doesn't stay at Chelsea for too long and just kind of like over simmers, like a Loftus-Cheek kind of example. A lot of people have been looking at him. Alex, I wanted to know if you feel like his position at Brighton's a threat in January, with a lot of clubs potentially looking for a good quality attacking fullback.
I think Brighton, I think they'll be safe in January just because of the times that we're living in. I don't think many clubs can justify going out spending lots of money on a right back, and Brighton are going to want to value him very highly. But he's a fantastic player. He's been a joy to watch. He was brilliant against Tottenham. Another game they were unlucky in. The thing is with Brighton, like, I fully agree that every time I've seen Brighton, they've been unlucky. United, I thought they gave Chelsea a good game on the first day of the season. They were good against Spurs, where they lost. But the thing is with Brighton, I think unlucky teams get relegated. And if Brighton don't start getting the rub of the green after Christmas, I think they could go down.
Yeah, I definitely think that it would be a real shame to see that. But you are right. It's good performances. You know, they're amazing to watch. But at the end of the day, if the results aren't coming in, then that's when you find your team in struggle. You can't kind of get through on good performances alone. And we did touch on Graham Potter as a manager. You know, somebody, you know, young, quite fairly early on in his managerial career, definitely got ground above him. Do you feel like there's a direct ascension plan for him within the Premier League? Could you see him, you know, potentially managing another club if Brighton were to go down, Alfie?
I definitely could. Like I say, I like him as a manager. I think he did a good job at Östersunds. Beat us lot at the Emirates Stadium, so obviously that was a big result for him in Sweden. Obviously, he's come over to England, and like I say, I think he plays good football. And yeah, I think he could potentially get a job in the press, especially as you see some of the managers that are still getting. I mean, Big Sam's still getting a job in the Premier League. I still think there's definitely room for like young, exciting managers such as like Graham Potter. But yeah, there's definitely plenty of teams that would take him in the Prem. I'd say, yeah.
Yeah. We'll move on to Burnley now. We'll finally get to talk about Burnley. We'll start with you, Alex, for, you know, a club which I'd almost describe them as frustrating, Burnley. I don't know about you, but I often at times find it hard to believe they've kind of survived playing this kind of football for so long. I think you have to credit Sean Dyche as a manager because, you know, Burnley have been a Premier League mainstay for a long time now. But I wonder if you think, well, how long can this kind of go for? Like, how often will he be able to keep playing this kind of football?
I thought at the start of the season that this would be Burnley's year to go. I think I watched them play against Newcastle right at the start of the season, and they looked terrible. You know, they made, you know, Newcastle ain't renowned for playing the best football, but they made Newcastle look like Barcelona. But to their credit, well, to Sean Dyche's credit, you know, he's turned it round, and in the last few weeks, Burnley looks a lot more solid. And I think it goes on. Going back to your question, it goes on for as long as Sean Dyche is there. I think he's that good of a manager. You know, only Burnley in the Premier League would losing Jeff Hendrick be a big loss. But they lost him in the summer, and you can't really notice because I think the draw with Everton was a bit of a turning point, and they've looked a lot more solid. They got a good point at Villa last week, a very good win last night, and I think Burnley will probably stay up again, much to people's frustration.
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head there. I think they will. But like I said, a frustrating team at times. Alfie, the quality of football that Burnley do play. We all know Sean Dyche is clearly a good manager. A manager probably gets underlooked for the kind of football that Burnley plays. It's almost kind of a running joke in the Premier League amongst fans, the kind of like style of play you expect when you go play Burnley away. But playing this kind of football, can you see like any potential, ascension for Burnley, keeping the same kind of mentality they play? I mean, or as long as Sean Dyche is there, do you feel like that is just what we're getting? That's like solidified.
I think they say stick with what you know best, and I think it definitely works for Burnley. They come to the Emirates, albeit like say a lucky, well, you could say it was a lucky win. The own goal, Aubameyang putting his home there. But like I say, it gets results. It keeps them up. I mean, they really have got an old-fashioned team, but I like some of their players. I think Nick Pope in there, he had a shaky start to the season, but he's definitely he's proving why he gets picked for England. I mean, at the back, Tarkowski and me, they've got that partnership. They know each other really well, and I think Tarkowski's a brilliant centre half. Personally, I think Ashley Barnes, it's good for him getting that goal last night. I think that was his first in the league this season. He's usually one that chips in with a few goals. And I think with Chris Wood and Ashley Barnes, the two strikers that like you say, they fit Sean Dyche's style of play. They're really, I say, traditional strike, good in the air. And like I say, as long as Sean Dyche is there, I think they'll stick with that football, and genuinely think that will still keep them in the Prem.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, go for it.
What I see with Burnley is I think they're very similar to when Stoke first come up to the Premier League. But the worst thing, Stoke losing Tony Pulis wasn't, they managed to adapt, but I don't think Burnley could do that. There were murmurs that Dyche was thinking of leaving in the summer, which I think would have been disastrous for Burnley, because I don't think anybody else with that squad would even give them a prayer. So I think, if Burnley keep Dyche, if he decides to stay, I think they'll stay up continually.
Yeah, I mean, Alfie touched on it by talking about Pope as well and how good a goalkeeper he is. One final point that I was going to ask you, Alex, avid England follower as well. Would you put Pope as England's number one, or do you still think Pickford and Henderson are kind of getting around? It's a tough one.
I am going very much against the popular opinion here. I would actually stick Jordan Pickford as number one. I don't think he's ever let England down. I think he's been decent in recent weeks. For me, going into the Euros, I personally would be happy to see Jordan Pickford as England's number one, but that's up for lots of debate, which I'm sure you're going to give me.
Jordan Pickford for number one. If any of you have any interesting points about that, please make sure you leave a comment.
I'll stay quiet on that one.
Yeah, I was going to say that could be quite a controversial one, but we move swiftly onwards. I believe next is Chelsea, boys. Chelsea. Alfie, I'll start with you. Chelsea, in terms of how far this season's gone, Frank Lampard as a manager, the squad they've got. There's been a couple of big signings they brought in the summer, which I feel have really not hit the ground running so far. There's obviously very talented guys in Timo Werner and Kai Havertz. How would you assess the situation so far?
I think it's definitely been disappointing for them. So they were good last night. So say beating a West Ham side that have been impressive this season. But like you say, Havertz and Werner, the money they spent on them, you'd sort of expect them to, for that money, sort of hit the ground running. I mean, we've watched Werner. He doesn't look brilliant. I know a lot of German fans were saying, they expected him to come over and they knew this was going to happen. But I thought for the money they spent on him, he would have chipped him. I think he's got four goals in the league this season. It's not brilliant. And like I say, Havertz the same. He got that hat-trick against Barnsley. And I think everyone thought, right, this is going to be him getting into it. But I think with Havertz, it's a different. I think he's obviously a lot younger. He's only 21. I think he will definitely be one for the future. And I think next season, give him a season to adapt to English football. Like I say, Werner keeps saying he's hating the physicality of the Premier League. Once they've had a year to adapt to it, I think next year will be the year. But I know, like me and Alex have said a lot, I don't think Lampard's really the man. If he wasn't a Chelsea legend, I don't know if he'd still be there. Especially this season, there's a lot more pressure on him with the money he's spent. Obviously, he's brought Ziyech in as well, who's had his injury problems. But still, with that squad they've got, you'd expect them to be doing a lot better. I mean, like I say, disappointing, really, as far as Lampard will probably be concerned.
Yeah, lingering on the Lampard point, it's something which I'm sure we're going to bring up for a couple of other teams maybe in the Premier League. Obviously, no names mentioned, but hiring ex-players as managers. Alex, do you feel it comes with a certain risk? Because obviously Lampard, I'd be Chelsea's, maybe him and Terry in the conversation, but Chelsea's best ever player, and he's at the helm at Chelsea, doesn't make the situation so much harder when it comes to the decision of whether he carries on his future there.
Look, I think Chelsea are a work in progress. I do. I think Lampard's not the finished article as a manager yet. I wouldn't see the point in sacking him. But that being said, Chelsea have got a history of being very harsh on sacking managers. You take Ancelotti, Di Matteo, who just won a Champions, just to name a few. If Frank Lampard wasn't Frank Lampard, I think he'd be under a lot more pressure than he is with them sitting fifth in the table. I think he finds it hard to get results against the top sides. They've played Liverpool, Everton, Man United and Tottenham this season. They haven't beat one of them. And I think you have got to question how good some of the signings have actually been. Ironically, their best signing has been the one they got for free, which was Thiago Silva, who was unbelievable last night.
Mm.
But like Alfie said, I think if you need to give Werner and Havertz, well, Ziyech as well, I suppose, a bit of time to adapt to the Premier League. But if you want top four, like Chelsea are going to want, or even a title charge, you haven't got time to let people adapt. But the way I see Chelsea is just a work in progress.
Yeah, no, I definitely feel there is groundwork that's been laid there. And like you said, it is time. You have to give these players and teams time. And that is a good point that I had to come on to. We already spoke about some of the signings they brought in. Kai Havertz, mainly, 21 years of age, a young guy, his whole career in front of him, Do you feel like we put too much pressure on our youth talent in football today? Because, obviously the success story everyone looks to in the last few years has been Kylian Mbappe over at PSG, and obviously the stuff he's been doing has been nothing short of miraculous at that age, bursting onto the scene so early at Monaco, securing a huge money move to PSG, and it's kind of almost destined in the stars that at some point he's going to end up at a big club like Real Madrid as well. It always just kind of seems laid out for him. But our own talents in the Premier League, at Arsenal, you've got Martinelli, you've got Mason Greenwood, Phil Foden, just to name a few. There are so many other young talents in the Premier League. And I guess you could call Kai Havertz that. He wasn't homegrown, but, bought in at a young age. I'll talk to both of you about this, but after I'll start with you. Do you feel we put too much pressure on our youth, particularly?
100%. Yeah. I think as well, there's too much pressure on the price tag. I think sort of like say, I know I've discussed when you're spending that sort of money on a player, you expect him to hit the ground running, but especially like say with a 21-year-old, he hasn't chosen that price. That's what they valued him at. And it's like say the amount of pressure, especially from the media, like Twitter, it's sort of comparing them to one and each other. But the young lads at the end of the day, it's like they're our age and they're playing Premier League football. I mean, like you say with Mbappe, Haaland, there is sort of like anomalies where they are world-class footballers as teenagers, but I mean, they've still got 10 years left ahead of them in the Premier League, if not more. So putting the pressure on them now to sort of carry the team. I know like for us this season, Bukayo Saka really has carried us, but the amount of pressure that must be on the young lads' shoulders, like I say with Havertz, with how much he cost. I think he was how much was he? 75 million, something like that.
It was around that kind of area. It was
yeah. and you think when you're that young, you've got that price tag on your shoulders, the weight of performing it must be horrible.
Yeah, no, I agree. Alex, would you say the same?
This is my opinion on it, right? And you're going to laugh at me for saying this, but I genuinely think there is such a mentality around these young players. And I genuinely believe this, that they are good on FIFA, so they expect them to come over to the Premier League and for them to just tear it apart.
That's not crazy. I don't think that's crazy. I see exactly what you mean.
You know, people, and I would say younger people, have expected Kai Havertz to come over and be really good just because they've used him on FIFA once or twice, when anyone with a reasonable mind knows he's going to take time to break in and perform. But yeah, like I said, I think the mentality around young players is they're not the finished article. Another good example at Chelsea would be Mason Mount. I like Mason Mount. I think he comes in for a lot of harsh criticism. I think because he's not Jack Grealish with the whole England thing. But like I said, I think you need to give these players time to mould into the player that they will become. And Kai Havertz will come good. I'm confident in that.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen them do it before. We've seen them do it in different areas at Chelsea. We've seen them do it for different clubs that they've previously played for. But yeah, there is a lot of pressure on these guys' backs, and we are living in a FIFA-orientated generation. You know, all football fans play FIFA, all football fans play Football Manager. It's just one of those things, and I see there's a lot of legs in your statement there with people seeing these guys in a virtual game and thinking they're going to come over and bag straight away. Moving away from Chelsea, Crystal Palace next on my list. It's kind of hard to assess Crystal Palace, I think, so far. I think at times they've exceeded, I think I'd say, and I think there's other times where I feel like maybe they've been a bit hard done by. They're one of those bogey teams for a lot of top Premier League clubs. They can come to your ground and they can give you a really, really tough game. Right now, Alex, where would you kind of assess Crystal Palace so far?
Solid. Nothing out the ordinary, but nothing to worry about. I think they'll be clear of any real danger. My only criticism of Crystal Palace would be they are so over-reliant on Wilfried Zaha. Me and Alfie watched the Palace-Newcastle game on the Friday night. Zaha, I think he was self-isolating, and they looked appalling. And then they went and lost the next game against Burnley, or it might have been the game. It was one of them. Zaha didn't play against Burnley or Newcastle, and they looked terrible. I think Eze is probably going to be the Zaha replacement in time, but I don't think he's the finished article yet. But with Wilfried Zaha, I just think they look like a typical Roy Hodgson side, a solid outfit that will cause a few upset. I know they got battered 7-0 at the weekend, but that anyone down there can get battered 7-0 by Liverpool. I don't care. But yeah, with Zaha, I think they just look like a typical Roy Hodgson outfit who are going to be hard to beat, and at the end of the day, pick up enough points to steer clear of any real danger.
Wilfried Zaha has been someone that Premier League fans have molded over for a very long time. There's been a lot of doubts about whether he'd stay at Palace, whether he was going, but there was times where he was definitely going. Arsenal was one of the destinations we were talking about only 2 seasons ago. So I think he has been there for a very long time. And you touched on Eberechi Eze as well, the signing brought in the summer, which was kind of like a mini saga in their own right. They were chasing him for quite a while. We spoke to Guardian journalist Ed Aarons, and he's a big Palace fan, and he was very keen on getting him in, and wasn't too familiar with his work over at QPR. And then I see him in the Premier League, and I think, oh wow, this guy does have flair. Like, he's someone who can, be built upon and be quite a good player for Palace. And I think potentially as a Zaha long-term replacement, that could be something that we see.
Zaha's not getting any younger as well. I think, is he 28 now?
Yes, he's getting on.
I'd say he's got 3 years left at his best, and then that's when they need Eze to. It's kind of like passing the baton over in the relay. I think they're going to pass the baton over to Eze to be that focal point. Zaha is a club legend at Palace. I don't think there's any doubt in that for what he's done. I think he's single-handedly kept them in the Premier League at times, but I think they will end up phasing him out and giving that, building the team around Eberechi Eze like they have done with Zaha.
I think it's almost unjust in that Zaha was definitely a player which could have gone to astronomical heights. I mean, Alfie, as we mentioned, Arsenal was potentially one of those destinations. And looking back maybe 2 seasons ago, do you feel like he should have capitalised or tried to push even harder? Because obviously there was a lot of resistance from Palace.
Yeah, I mean, at the time, I remember we were looking at signing him at the same time as Nicolas Pepe. And I remember thinking at the time of, obviously Pepe's a lot younger. And I genuinely at the time thought that Pepe would have been a better signing. But I mean, I'm wrong. I mean, I've seen how good he, like you say, they do rely on Zaha a lot. And he's just a brilliant player. And it's a shame really that he picked the Ivory Coast over England, because I think he would have been a useful outlet for England. But no, like you say, he's just a wonder to watch. And when he's not in the team, they do play a lot different. But just to touch on the 7-0 against Liverpool, I don't know if you actually watched the game, but I thought first half Palace were hard done by going in at 3-0 down at half time.
Yeah,
I thought Ayew missed a couple of chances. There was that cutback for he tried to cut it back to Zaha, and it's a poor pass, and it's chances like that they'll regret. But like Alex says, I think Roy, they are a solid side. I know it's funny saying that on the back of a 7-0 defeat, but like I think it was West Brom, they turned over 5-1. I think even Benteke's chipped over a couple goals. And I think that's another player, if they can get Benteke firing again. I know he scored a couple in recent weeks, and, you know, he got sent off. I think if you can get him firing, I think then, you know, Palace will look even better.
Yeah, I mean, we all remember what a player like Benteke can do. You know, it wasn't very long ago that he was doing it for Aston Villa. You know, it was maybe the Liverpool signing, which I think halted him quite in quite a way. Obviously, that was definitely not a finished article, Liverpool side. But moving swiftly on, Everton I've got next on my list, and I'm sure that Everton are a club which all three of us could, you know, have quite a lot to talk about. I mean, at the start of the season, I was looking at their transfer window because we did a lot of coverage for the transfer window, talking to a lot of journalists about Everton in particular and who they were trying to bring in. And, you know, myself and Reece, we both couldn't quite believe the kind of works they were doing. You know, bringing in Carlo Ancelotti alone was absolutely crazy when there were other clubs that were crying out for a top manager, and Everton sweep under the radar and grab him. I think Carlo Ancelotti is an absolutely fantastic manager. But their season so far, Alex, with the players they brought in, how would you kind of assess it? Because there's been so many highs, and then also just been times where you're just thinking, oh, come on now. Like, you've got all this. What's going on?
I think it's, on the whole, been very good. I don't think you can argue with it. I think Everton, you could probably label them the past 10 years the perennial under-strugglers of the Premier League. Underperformers, not under-strugglers. I think they had that mini dip where they won one game in 6. But I think, to their credit, the last 3 games, I think they've beat Chelsea, Leicester and Arsenal. And they're looking very good, and I think they've got a brilliant manager, and I think they'll get in the Europa League.
Yeah, I can't help but agree. I think if the performances if consistency can be shown, I think there's no reason why they couldn't go to the Europa League and have a really good time there. You know,
I just got a touch as well. I'm so happy to see Dominic Calvert-Lewin scoring the goals that he is. I think it's brilliant for English football, and I think he can be an asset to England. I think he's having a brilliant season. Full credit to him. I'm actually really happy to see him scoring as many as he is.
It's fantastic, isn't it? And good goals as well. Not like little kind of scrappy things. He can do it all. I mean, a lot of goals in the air as well. Really naturally kind of talented striker, and he offers a different dynamic to England as well. He offers something which the other strikers don't, I feel. But one of the big signings coming out in the summer, one of the big names flown around the world in terms of signings, no one was really seeing it coming, was James Rodriguez coming to the Premier League. And quite a lot of people were very quick to undersell it and think, what on earth is that? That's such a typical Everton signing a finished player. And yet he's come in, and you've seen flares of that player we know that he can be. And I feel like he's done quite well so far, and he has the ability to do more. Alfie, James Rodriguez, a player of Bayern Munich, Real Madrid, Monaco, Porto, you know, some huge name clubs behind him. Do you feel like Everton was a step down for him, or do you feel like it was a worthy project to attach himself to and to try and project himself back into where he can play?
I think it was definitely the right move for his career. and they're moving to a club that they've obviously got a project ongoing. They've got a good manager, like you say, on Ancelotti. And I think he was sort of at a stalemate at Real Madrid. You know, people were saying he was living off the 2014 World Cup, which he was obviously absolutely world class at. And I think, in a way, it was sort of like a move to refresh his career. And I think he has done that. Obviously, you say he's shown glimpses of what he can do. And on his day, he is a world class footballer. He's creative. I mean, he is genuinely one of the slowest players I've ever seen. He does not like to run. He jogs around. He walks around. But I mean, when you're as good as him, you just can't you? I mean, set pieces. He's just. And I mean, like you say, touch upon their summer signings. I think Allen was a fantastic signing. I think he was a really good player for Napoli. He's sort of like one of them players. He just loves doing all the dirty work. He's everywhere. And even Doucouré, I think he was another good signing from Watford. Played well for them. Obviously, despite getting relegated, still a good signing for them. And I think they're starting to be a lot more sensible with the signings. You know, you look, the 40 million for Iwobi. I know he's sort of picking up a little bit of form, but it's still ridiculous money when you think about it for a player of Iwobi's quality. And I think they're sort of moving away from these sort of ridiculous signings and the making signings that are definitely going to improve them and hopefully for them push them back into European football.
I think that comes in with good leadership, doesn't it? More thought out, more calculated signings. And, you know, who's more calculated than Carlo Ancelotti? You know, I feel like it was, again, I can't undersell it, just an incredible pull for a manager for Everton. Someone which arguably they deserve. They've been knocking, I think, I've said it quite a while as well, that Everton every now and again, they get these run of players and they get a little bit of run of form and you think, hang on a minute, are they actually about to do something here? Because, you know, I think everyone agrees that they do have groundwork there, which they've always been able to kind of push upon, but it always just kind of implodes. And I feel like Ancelotti could be the guy to maybe get them out of this situation. And I don't know about you, Alex, but one of my favourite players at Everton at the moment is probably Luca Digne at left back. I feel like he is absolutely exemplary. I think he's one of the best fullbacks in the league. I think if you compiled a top 10 in the world, I think you wouldn't be surprised if you'd see him on that list, in my opinion. Someone of his caliber, again, a lot of clubs are interested in him. He's had, I think it was PSG and Barcelona on his list already for a player, you know, in his like mid to late 20s. Do you feel like a lot of these players that Everton do have, if there is, you know, obviously if the form continues, is there a risk of them leaving, or do you feel the project is worthy to stay for?
I'm not sure, to be honest. I think, you know, like you said, Everton have had these run of players who have left, you know, even 10 years ago, Mikel Arteta, Lukaku, just to name a few. I would say it is a good project, but if Barcelona or Real Madrid or someone like that comes knocking, it's hard to turn it down. And I think, you know, if Calvert-Lewin keeps scoring, I don't see why a Manchester City or a Manchester United wouldn't come knocking either.
Yeah, I think it was a Red Top headline a while ago, but there was like 75 million interest from United. Obviously, you never know how much legs are in these comments, but like you said, a player of his caliber, if he keeps scoring, why not? You know, why not get that move? Moving on again, Fulham, other kind of story here. I don't really know what to say about Fulham. I think I predicted them dead last at the start of the average pundits for this season. I think we did a Premier League table review, and I think that's where I had Fulham. We'll start with you, Alfie. Fulham, what's there to say really there?
I think definitely the start of the season, they were subpar, really poor. And I think even Paddy Power, after 3 games, paid out for them to be relegated. I think that sort of summed up the way they started. But since they've knocked on from that, they had a good result at Leicester, beating them 2-1. I think they were unlucky. Another team unlucky against Liverpool. Obviously, 1 up against them. And I think a point against Liverpool, no matter if you're taking the lead, I think it's still a brilliant point, especially for a team like Fulham. And I think Scott Parker, he's a young manager. I think he speaks well. He's probably the right man for the job. And I think they have got quite a few good players in there. Lookman's young. I know that Panenka the other week was absolutely terrible. But it's them mistakes that they learn from and make them a better player. And I mean, Alfonso Areola in net. I mean, what a lone star. No matter if he plays or doesn't play well. I mean, just for like the experience, he's played for Champions League clubs. I think that's a brilliant sort of player. And Anthony Robinson, another good player. I mean, AC Milan wanted him from Wigan, so I think they have got the squad to potentially stay in the Premier League. I mean, if they build up on this current form, there's no reason why they can't knock on, get a few points on the bounce, and stay up.
Yeah, it would be interesting to see if they can do it. But I feel like for every good player that they've got, I think there's also players which are just not up to the par of the Premier League. And obviously, you have a good season in the Championship, and the Championship, they cannot be undersold. It's one of the hardest leagues in world football, in my opinion. I think Alex, as an avid Championship viewer, I think you'd probably agree. But
yeah,
I mean, some of the players that Fulham do have, they kind of do show that they are kind of lacking that next kind of step up. Do you feel that January could be a crucial window for them in order if they hope to stay in the Prem?
I'm going to throw a bit of a curveball about Fulham. I think they're going to stay up. I think, don't get me wrong, they had a terrible start, but I think, you can't write any team off after 3 matches. Like when Alfie said, the bookies were paying out for them to be relegated. And I think you've got to credit Scott Parker, really, because I think it could have been very easy for heads to drop and for Fulham to really, be cut adrift. But, they've got a few wins under their belt. I really like Scott Parker. I think, like Alf said, he speaks very well. He's a likeable bloke. He was a brilliant player and a really likeable bloke. But I think Fulham do need some reinforcements in January. Surprisingly, Mitrovic has kind of been pushed out of the picture a little bit for some reason or other. And I thought they were very unlucky at the weekend. Even with 10 men, I thought they looked like they were going to win. But yeah, like you said, I think Fulham, if they can bring in some quality in January, I think they'll fancy their chances at staying up.
Yeah, no, I definitely think they've got the ability to, as long as the signings come in. Like I said,
The problem with Fulham is they're too naive. You got to credit the way they try and play football. They try and play some lovely stuff, but they're just not as good as other teams. It's brilliant in the Championship, and it's they're just going to get out footballed in the Premier League. It was the story of when they last come up. But you've got to credit Scott Parker, the way they try and knock it about. But I think, like you say, if you bring some quality in, they could probably make a run at staying up.
Yeah. Early on in his managerial career, I mean, we don't know where Scott Parker could ascend to. Hopefully he does have a few interesting things to put on his CV at the end of the Fulham run. But moving on again, Leeds I've got on my list. Leeds next. I think Leeds are another club which I think that everyone probably has quite a lot of points to maybe mention. Alfie, I'll start with you for Leeds. I'll keep it open. How do you feel things have gone so far?
I think you've probably come at the wrong time, obviously, on the back of a battering from Man United. But I think they've had sort of a mixed start to the season. I think they're probably where they'll want to be. They're obviously the highest in the league out of any of the newly promoted teams. And at times, they do play really good football. It's attacking football. And they've been unlucky in a lot of games. They should have beat us lot when we drew 0-0. Pepe got sent off stupid. But even before the red card, they were all they were hitting the bar, the post. And like I say, there was a lot of people sort of doubting whether Bamford could be the man to lead the line for him. And I think this season he's proved a lot of doubt was wrong. He's played well, and like I say, Leeds have played well. The thing is, like I say, with Leeds, it's either a goals fest or sort of. I mean, I always back goals in the Leeds games, but you look, they've obviously the 0-0 against Arsenal, the 1-0 against Everton, but then they pull out 4-3 against Liverpool, the loss, which they could have easily won in.
Yeah,
I think it was a bit of a dodgy game against Fulham, the 4-3. I think them sort of games they should probably be winning. And obviously the 6-2 United, they're always exciting games, and you've got to credit Bielsa for that. I mean, they do play good football, and I think they'll definitely be safe this season, 100%.
Yeah, I think I predicted them to be safe this season. I was definitely one of the people doubting Patrick Bamford at the start of the season, looking at his run in the Premier League prior. He maybe would be quite quick to cut him off and wonder if he can do it again. But he's definitely someone having a good season as part of that squad. And you touched on Bielsa as a manager. Alex, Bielsa, you always see in like pictures, don't you, quotes from amazing managers in world football, amazing players in world football saying Bielsa helped me to do this. Bielsa's one of the guys I look to. Guardiola's a massive advocate for Bielsa. Do you feel like he is one of the most possibly underrated managers in world football? Is he up there with the greats?
Well, he won Coach of the Year, so I wouldn't say he's underrated. But I think, he won some award like that. I can't remember what it was. But anyway, I feel like, I was amazed when Leeds got him in, especially when they were in the Championship. I think, they didn't go up the first season, and I wasn't surprised. I think he would have to take a year to get used to England. He doesn't speak much English. He's never managed in England before. And they were worthy winners of the Championship last season. And I think you've got to credit him for coming up and giving it a good go. I think he is the catalyst, for these managers such as Guardiola and Pochettino. And if people like that are speaking that highly of you, then I think the proof's in the pudding, really.
They definitely are kind of a Bonneville and Premier League club. They've got a lot of rivals in the Premier League. Obviously, seeing them play United, and seeing us win against Leeds was particularly fun.
I think they're so good to watch. Like we've said, I think they'll be fine. I think they'll just be looking over their shoulder a little bit at the minute. But they've got West Brom and Burnley coming up, and I think that'll be 6 points. Yeah. And I think that'll kind of pull them away from the bottom three. And I think Leeds will finish about 12th or 13th.
Yeah, I can't help but agree there. Moving on again, Leicester City. Right. So my overall views on Leicester, I really enjoy Leicester as a club. Again, another Midlands club. I'm sure, Alex, you've got a lot to talk about with Leicester, but I really enjoy them as a Premier League club. I feel like they've got one of the best managers in the league in Brendan Rodgers. I'm a big fan of Brendan Rodgers. I respect him when he was at Liverpool. It was just annoying that's who he was coaching at the time. But I feel like he's done very good things with that Leicester squad. I feel like they've got some of the best, individual area place players in the league. I think I've said it so many times, massive advocate for him on the pundits. Wilfred Ndidi, just one of my favourite players within that in those Leicester ranks. Jamie Vardy firing on all cylinders again, defying age, just constantly coming in and doing such a good and efficient job in the Premier League. Leicester, whether they'll be able to kind of reach the heights of winning the league again is another question, in my opinion. But right now, they just always look like a top 6 contender. And I'm not sure what it's going to take them to that next level. Because I agree they should be looking at regular European football. I think that's something they should be aspiring to. And, and who's to say not greater? They should be looking at all these competitions thinking, we could have a serious run at this with the players that we have. But I'll start with you, Alex, on this one. Like I said, another Midlands club. What do you feel is needed for Leicester to kind of maybe reach the height of heights again?
A bit of consistency, to be honest. You look at Leicester's record this season. I think they've won 9, lost 4, and drew 0. I think Leicester have put in some brilliant performances this season, but I think they've also put in some shockers as well. Losing at home to Fulham, losing at home to, I think it was West Ham. But then, complete polar opposites. They went to the Etihad and won 5. Was it 5-1, 5-2? Went to the Emirates and won. I think, if Leicester can get a little bit of consistency, I think they'll be looking for top 4. I don't think they'll get top 4. I think they'll finish 5th. I think them and Everton will be the 5th and 6th place teams. But, again, not particularly something I enjoy saying, but you've got to credit Leicester for what they've done, especially after, the tragedy that they went through, not last season, the season before. Full credit to Leicester. They've got a good manager, a really good squad of players, and a Cov boy in James Maddison who's doing really well for him. So,
yeah, a Cov boy. Full disclaimer: if it wasn't already known by the Pundits fans, Alex is an avid Coventry City fan, so we'll put that in there. But yeah, Leicester City again, like you said, they're coming off the bat of a terrible incident which happened around the club, and I often feel like in kind of a polar opposite way, these incidents can unite a club together. And there was a strong affinity for when the club obviously won the Premier League. The fans were in disbelief. It was it was an incredible Premier League season. It was, you couldn't make it up, could you? I mean, how that kind of season went for them. But obviously once a team like an underdog club does that well and kind of, hits those kind of heights, it can be extremely bittersweet for the fans to watch them continuously not do it again. And I almost feel like maybe winning the Premier League with an underdog club can almost be obviously amazing at times, but then the seasons to come when they aren't hitting those heights, people can forget, can't they? People can forget, like, well, hang on a minute, let's just steady on. We've got to do an awful lot of work if we're going to want to carry on that kind of form. Alfie, do you feel like Leicester could ever reach that kind of stage again? Even if they're clinching a League Cup, an FA Cup, something small again to start them off with, do you feel like they could ever be a regular, Premier League title contender ever again?
I think you can't really write them off. Obviously, like Alex says, the one thing that lets them down is their consistency. But no, I mean, this season, they're up there, the top three this season. Are they second or third
Second.
at the minute? Second. So there you go. You can't write a team off in second, playing good football. I mean, Vardy's playing some of the best football of his life. He genuinely gets better with age.
Yeah.
And I mean, when you've got a player like Vardy, you've got, like, say, Ndidi, fantastic player. Schmeichel is still a brilliant keeper. They have got the players to maybe not challenge, like you say, for the league, but definitely to win a League Cup or an FA Cup in the next couple of years. And if they start winning sort of the so-called like lower trophies, like the League Cup, maybe the FA Cup, then that maybe like that'll push them on to sort of attract better signings, maybe. And then, like you say, in a few years, who says that they can't go on to challenge for the Premier League title? I mean, Alex says that they don't think they'll get top four. I personally think that they'll sneak in the top four, maybe fourth, because I think that'll be a massive step up for them going from Europa League to the Champions League.
Yeah, I think it really depends on how we see clubs like United and Chelsea kind of end the season, because that was certainly who they were competing with last season. So I think it depends on the kind of run and form we see. And coming up as our next three teams, we've got a good Premier League trio, starting with league leaders and current champions Liverpool. Again, definitely a very different start to the season than what we saw last season for them. Still, absolutely incredible performances. No one's denying this. And, but a season played with injury so far, an injury which could have hit them, in a very, very bad way. But I feel like it's Klopp, isn't it? Credit to him. He's an absolutely top draw manager, if not the best manager in the world at the moment. And he could definitely get a lot out of the players that he does have. But Alfie, I'll start with you with Virgil van Dyke. Obviously, this is the big omission. Probably the best defender in the world when he's fully fit at the moment. But how do you feel like that defensive kind of injury has affected Liverpool so far?
Do you know? I think when you've got a manager like Klopp, he's dealt with it so well. I mean, Fabinho slotted into centre half, and I mean, he's made it his own. He's played brilliant. I mean, even I was a huge sort of critic of Joel Matip, but I think he's slotted in as well, and he's played brilliantly. And I think it is all down, like you say, Klopp is 100% the best manager in the world at this current time. But I think that the worst thing for the Van Dijk injury was sort of how it came about. I mean, it's a horrendous challenge from Pickford, isn't it? It's needless, it's rash, and obviously it's offside, so it's even worse for him, sort of him not getting penalised for it. But like I say, that they've just turned it. They've sort of played it into their advantage, put in Fabinho, like I say, playing brilliantly. And I think with Liverpool, I remember Klopp saying at one time, attack is the best sort of defence. And I mean, like I say, the front three they've got, without a doubt, is the best three in world football. And I mean, I criticised Jota as a signing at the start of the season. I thought it was a bit of a weird one, but he slotted into that sort of, say, four of the front three now. And I mean, when he plays, he's definitely been playing like they want him to. So
yeah, I mean, you touched on the best three in world football. I definitely feel that there's, over the past few seasons, that's kind of been undeniable. Really, they've been that good. And you talk about like duos as well. I think like there's a big duo in the Premier League this season that we will go on to talk about a bit later. But Sadio Mane and Salah, two just exemplary footballers. But Roberto Firmino has been somebody that's come under fire an awful lot this season from Liverpool fans and from other fans alone. Reese, big Liverpool fan on the podcast, and he is definitely a guy against Roberto Firmino, especially when Diogo Jota has been playing so well this season. But then again, Firmino will come back and he'll do something. And you think, okay, there is flair there. There is still amazing talent there. Maybe this is why Klopp still favours him. Roberto Firmino, Alex, do you feel like Diogo Jota could potentially bully him out of the team?
I like Firmino. I think he comes in for a lot of criticism. I think the work he does off the ball goes underappreciated. That being said, I think maybe the signing of Jota, which has been a very shrewd bit of business, for a deal that, come from nowhere. I think it was deadline day it first got reported. But I think the signing of him has probably, put a rocket up the backside of Roberto Firmino, really. Where he's thought, right, okay, they've brought someone in here. I could be phased out if this guy comes in and does really well. So he needs to get back to his A game. And I think, to his credit, that's what he's done. I think, he's not a massive goal scorer, but he's a scorer of important goals, which is, invaluable when Liverpool are in the position that they're in. As it's scary how good Liverpool look with all these injuries. I think they'd probably be waltzing away with the league again if they had a fully fit squad to choose from.
I think you're 100% right there. But you said how good Liverpool look. Is it a case of just raw, incredible, amazing Liverpool, or do you also think another contributing factor has been the standard of the rest of the league? Because, we mentioned at the start of the Premier League, some moments you're seeing clubs in a great spell of form. The next minute you're seeing them getting absolutely battered. I won't talk about them too much, we'll move on to them soon, but Manchester United are in third place. I do not know how that happened, but we are. I was going to say, do you feel like it's been just, again, still exemplary Liverpool? Or do you feel that the rest of the league's form has had and also a bit of a factor in why they're looking so competent even with you?
I don't think it's, obviously, the team we're going to talk about next haven't been to the standard that they have been in recent years, but that you can't, Liverpool can only beat what's in front of them, and they're doing it really convincingly. So I think you've got to give them credit. I think, like I said, they've got probably the best manager in the world at the minute. So yeah, I just think, it's Liverpool have been exemplary. I don't think you can take that away from them.
Yeah, as painful as it is at times to say it, you can't not credit them, can you? They are an excellent team with an excellent manager. Moving on, Manchester City, another Premier League mainstay, an interesting club to talk about, an interesting season so far from them. One point to start off with, I think Pep Guardiola signing and committing his future to Manchester City was something that certainly I wasn't expecting. I thought it would be time for maybe Pep to move on and someone else to come in, but here he is now. He's committed his future to Man City, providing everything goes well. Which Pep Guardiola is one of those managers you struggle to see being sacked from a club. But Alfie, Pep Guardiola on a long-term deal, was that the right move?
I'm never too sure with Pep personally. I think he needs the checkbook, and he needs sort of the unlimited funds. And you've seen some of the defensive signings he's made. I think a lot of them have been poor, to say the least. But I think when it comes to obviously signing attacking players, like I say, some of the signings that have been made under his tenure at Man City have been absolutely fantastic. But I think one of the main things, obviously they've dropped off this season. No, there's no doubt about that. And I think one of the main things he's failed to do as a manager is sort of replace Fernandinho. I think during his earlier years, he was one of the main players for Pep, and I think sort of he's getting on now. He's into his 30s. I think he's still playing this season, isn't he? But it's just through injuries, and I think that's one of the things he's failed to do is fully replace him. And I think that's sort of what has caused sort of the last couple seasons, the drop from Man City. So I think maybe personally, I think it would have been time for Pep to go on and gone to a new challenge. But who knows? Let's see if he can sort of rebuild the City side and get him back to fighting for the title.
Fernandinho, a great shout there. I feel like an underrated player, Fernandinho, in my opinion, in a lot of his Man City career. It wasn't until possibly the second half of whilst he's been at City that I've kind of truly looked at him and go, wow, he is actually a very, very valuable player. It's just always someone that I've known as of talent, but just maybe someone that just hasn't been put in those conversations. But I do definitely think he has been a great player for City over the years. And Manchester City are in possession of arguably one of the best players, well, not even arguably, he is one of the best players in world football, in Kevin De Bruyne. Probably the best midfielder in the Premier League, probably one of the best midfielders in world football, putting in that conversation. And I feel like whether Pep Guardiola, obviously whether they secured Champions League football last season, whether Pep Guardiola stayed, I feel like that was a big factor in why a lot of the players stuck around. And Kevin De Bruyne is somebody who I feel like could go on for one more big push at another big club, probably of a Barcelona or a Real Madrid standard. But every minute he's at City, it's just a plus for City, isn't it? And a lot of people have been saying this season hasn't been very good for him, and maybe a little bit slower than what we've seen from some other seasons, but the stats and the figures are still there for Kevin De Bruyne. Alex, would you probably say De Bruyne, in terms of City players in the last decade, is he number one? You obviously got Aguero, you've got Company in that conversation.
I wouldn't say. Look, he's a fantastic footballer, but for me, the number one for Manchester City has to be the man who's just left, David Silva. Which I still think David Silva probably still had a role to play at Manchester City, if I'm honest with you.
Yeah.
But I think it was more his decision to leave than the club's. Manchester City are 8th, and that's kind of unheard of since Guardiola took over. But I do think they'll find form, and I think they will get top 4. I can't see Manchester City staying 8th, and I think if they didn't, that would be disastrous for Manchester City. I think they are one club who could really do with not playing Thursday nights and then having, the jet lag and the hangover of playing on Sundays. I think Manchester City would probably rather take no European football than Europa League football.
Yeah, I think I'd agree there. Manchester City were who I had in the Premier League this season. I thought Liverpool would still be knocking on the door, but I feel like Man City would be that hungry from last season and feel that annoyed that they just had to go and get it. And so far, there's a lot of questions whether that's going to happen. Liverpool so far look very, very comfortable up at the top. But definitely one half of Manchester, still looking quite promising. Go to the other half of Manchester, and ahead of Manchester City in the table, currently sitting at 3rd, as I previously mentioned. My own club, Manchester United. Don't know what you boys thought of the season so far. I mean, for me, as a United fan, it's been utterly bizarre. Because one minute you're thinking we're looking at a team of players being carried by Bruno Fernandes, and I cannot stress enough carried. He is that good, in my opinion. He's the best signing that's been made post-Ferguson. One of the best signings in the Premier League in the last 5, 6, 7 years, I think, as well. And I don't remember the last time I've seen a signing being bought in January affecting a club as much as Bruno Fernandes in recent years. I do not recall it. And United are a club which get thrown around a lot with obviously the VAR penalties. There's always something which comes to the conversation, which we will touch on. But for me, so far this season, there's so much wrong, and there's more wrong than there is right. But I feel like I mentioned with Liverpool, is it possibly the standard of the rest of the Premier League that's maybe helped project them into first? And I feel like that's the case with United as well. We'll start with Alex. In terms of United, where are your thoughts? I mean, are you part of the Solskjaer PE teacher kind of demographic? Or?
Well, I can't actually believe, I think if you win your game in hand, you go up to 2nd place.
Yeah. And
you've kind of just come out of nowhere. I think you've got to credit Solskjaer, really. I think after the Arsenal game at home, he was probably, fighting for his job. And have you lost in the league since then?
I don't believe so.
I don't believe you have. So you've got to credit him there, to be fair. I don't think he's the finished article as a manager, and I don't think he's a Manchester United capable manager. I don't think that. But he's 3rd now. He's on a good run of form. Man United are riding the crest of the wave at the minute. Go up to 2nd. I don't think you'll challenge Liverpool. But, top 4 again, which, it's looking likely at the minute. Yeah. Especially after the disappointment of how you exited the Champions League this year, which again will be a big factor. Playing Thursdays, is that going to make Manchester United wilt a little bit? you never know. But like I said, I think you summed it up perfectly. You know, it is your club, so I'd expect you to do that. But there's so much wrong, but it seems to be going right at the minute.
Yeah, it's honestly, it's utterly bizarre. It's a weird Premier League season. I think in the Europa League we've drawn Real Sociedad, which I'm not entirely comfortable for. I think Real Sociedad are again a very good team in the league. They're a team that I
David Silva.
Yeah, exactly. They're a team I'd compare quite similarly to an RB Leipzig over in Germany. You know, in terms of recent successes, they're not going to touch the top of the league. But they're a really good mainstay in their own respected leagues, and I don't know if we're going to progress in that competition. But whether that's for the best, I don't know. I think there's a lot to focus on in the Premier League, and you know we're still in the League Cup as well. You know, there's still a lot of football to be played. But the Europa League is one that, you know, I feel like we could be shown an early exit door unless we really apply ourselves. And Ollie wants to go out and get that particular competition trophy. Alfie, I'll talk to you a little bit about United. Going forward right now, Bruno Fernandes, like I said, I've already mentioned, I say behind Kevin De Bruyne personally. I think he's the second best midfielder in the league right now. Other players that we've got cutting around at the club, we've got obviously Paul Pogba, a guy that we covered a couple of weeks ago on the podcast, who, you know, plenty to say about him there. Donny van der Beek, who can't seem to get a game. And then going forward, obviously, Edinson Cavani, Anthony Martial and Rashford. And I feel like the 6-2 against Leeds almost hides it a little bit. I feel like we are still lacking an awful lot going forward. That was just a particularly really strong game. I mean, 2 of those goals coming from Scott McTominay. As United, as an attacking threat, how would you kind of assess them at the moment with what the games we've seen so far?
I think it's sort of mixed. I think, like I say, Martial especially, last season, obviously, scoring goals. This season, I think he's only on, you'll know, he's only on a couple, I think. Yeah. Obviously, not doing quite as well as he'd have hoped. But, I mean, like I say, Bruno Fernandes, I mean, you hate to admit it, but he is absolutely unbelievable, really. I can't believe one player can have that sort of effect at a club. But like I said, with the likes of Paul Pogba as well, I think recently, I know he did. I don't think he started against Leeds, did he? But I think recently he has picked up some form, and he sort of shows these glimpses of what he really can be. And I think a player like Pogba, if you can get him in the right form, in the right position, sort of playing the football you know he can play, then I think United will not struggle. And I think with a midfield of sort of him and Fernandes in, I think it's brilliant. But like I say again with Rashford, I think Rashford sort of goes under the radar. I mean, I thought against Leeds he was brilliant. He's getting back to sort of taking on his man again. He's getting that confidence, and I think, like I say, at the minute Rashford's smashing it on and off the pitch, isn't he? Really.
Yes.
And I think United going forward, that's probably what they're going to look forward to. I mean, the defence. I mean, I'm still not a fan of Maguire. I think De Gea has seen better seasons. I mean, since sort of the 2018 World Cup, I don't think he's been at his best. But I think when he sets the bar so high for himself, being at the time, he was the world's best keeper, in my opinion, for at least 2 years. I mean, absolutely phenomenal keeper. I think that's probably why you see the downfall of him more, when he's obviously set his bar so high and his standards so high. But I think if United sort of get in a world-class centre-back, like you say, they hoped Maguire would have the same effect as Van Dyke. I think if they get a Van Dyke-style player, then I will be worried about United. And possibly sort of, I don't know whether, I know he's scored twice, whether Scott McTominay is the man for that role if they want a proper title challenge. I mean, you might disagree. You've watched them a lot more than me.
I mean, in terms of what my main criticism of United this season, a lot of times you've seen Ollie opt for 2 more defensive midfielders, and then you've got 1 kind of creative outlet. And I don't think it's needed. I think we need 1 competent DM. I think Nemanja Matic is perfectly fine for 1 game, but then I feel like it's obviously an aging player. You play him constantly throughout the season, you'll start to see the cracks. So I think a competent DM is what we've been looking for a very, very long time. And McTominay offers you something, Fred offers you something, but none of them are going to...
I think you've got to give full credit to Fred, to be fair. You know, I saw Man United play last season and I thought, who on earth is he? Like, he looks he looks abysmal. But I've been really impressed with Fred in recent weeks. I'd actually go as far as saying he's one of the more underrated players in the league.
Yeah,
I think you're. Sorry, I'll just chip in there. I think the one thing with Fred is there's no sort of doubt about how he can play this season. I think he's just got that sort of live wire in him. I think it is like, say, with the South American players. I mean, against PSG, getting himself sent off, he is sort of liable to getting himself a stupid yellow or a stupid red that puts him in. And I think, especially for a player in his position, sort of getting a yellow card is sort of it sort of kind of fit the game. So obviously, if he's got to bring down a player on the counter attack, which in his position he'll have to do plenty of times, sort of getting a stupid yellow like he does at times for needless challenges, I think that sort of is what lets him down.
Well, I mean, you mentioned the red card there, and I tell you what, that's if we are talking about Fred, that was a situation where I was furious at mainly Ollie, because every single person who was watching that game knew what was coming in that game. They knew he was going to go off, and you're just thinking it's inevitable. So this halftime whistle blows rather, and you're like, okay, so Fred will be off halftime. We'll come back and we'll reassess. We'll see if we can do it. And then I couldn't believe that he was still on the pitch. And it's like, well, this is confirmed then. And then you see him being sent off, and you're like, well, I literally didn't even flinch. I was like, yeah, well, that was going to happen. We knew that was that was part of the script because of a terrible managerial decision, in my opinion. And that's the thing with Ollie is, like I said, we sometimes play two DMs and one creative midfielder. I would much rather see a combination between Matic, McTominay and Fred, depending on the kind of team we're facing, and having Donny and Bruno play together, because I don't know how much you guys have seen of Donny van der Beek, but the guy doesn't stop running. He covers so much.
I can't lie, he's not a player I've seen too much of.
I've seen him at Ajax, but not sort of. And I mean, you look at the Champions League, the season. Obviously, Ajax got to semi-finals, and he was one of the main players in that team. And I was surprised that he stayed an extra season, really. Yeah. I'm surprised, really. I mean, he's not really getting a look in at United at the minute, is he? But I think that's sort of down, like you say, to the choice of two defence midfielders and Fernandez's form. He's not going to replace him, is he?
No, he's not going to replace Fernandes, but I feel like he just sitting alongside him, Donny will go and he'll run around, he'll do the dirty work, he will cover the entirety of that pitch. And then the DM is there to assist the defence, rather, and then you've got Bruno, free reign to assist the attackers. I think if you apply that, you're looking at a real threat. Because Fred can offer creativity at times, but he's not the finished article in that parameter. I think he does do more of the gritty kind of dirty work as well. And Scott McTominay, again, is a different kind of player to Matic. We've got so many players which occupy the same position, but none of them are guaranteed every week starters, in my opinion, which is a real situation to look towards, as well as defence, as we've already mentioned. But we've got the youngster Amad Diallo coming in January. We paid 40 million for him in the summer, 40 million euros in the summer, and he's coming in from Atalanta. I can't say I'm not very familiar. I'm not too sure, but potentially another creative outlet if he's joining up with the first team straight away. But United are a team at the moment which I think are exceeding expectations when you look at the table. But as a second half of the season will be the real test for them, I think. So definitely a club to keep your eyes out for in the second half of the Premier League. But moving on again, Newcastle I've got next on my list, and I'll start with you, Alex. Normally a Newcastle season ticket holder, you get yourself to quite a few games at Newcastle. You know the ground quite well. You know the fans. How would you say their season's gone so well?
The football has been horrible. I can't lie. It's I've watched, I'd say, a bulk of their games this season when they haven't played at Saturday 3:00. I've watched them play, and the football is just it would send you to sleep. It's as bad as Burnley's, I would probably say. That being said, somehow Steve Bruce just pulls a result out of nowhere. You take, for example, they got completely obliterated by Brighton on the second game of the season. The next week they went to Tottenham and they got a point. I don't know how he does it. They sit in 12th, which is a bit of a mystery to me, which again probably says about the rest of the Premier League. But I think, Callum Wilson, a shrewd bit of business, very good signing. is probably, keeping a lot of pressure off Steve Bruce's shoulders. And the ironic thing is, Newcastle have got a big game in the Cup tonight. Steve Bruce could actually be the man who ends this massive wait for a trophy.
Yeah.
And I think it would probably be the most ironic thing going.
It would be kind of poetic, wouldn't it, really, when you think about it? But, you mentioned Callum Wilson being brought in the summer. I think Newcastle had quite a good window with some of the business they did. And Callum Wilson obviously coming from Bournemouth. I'm very surprised that Bournemouth weren't a team that Newcastle and other Premier League clubs didn't look more towards. There's plenty of players still there.
Well, they got Wilson and Fraser in, who know each other very well. I think they were best friends during the time at Bournemouth. And I think, there's still a lot to come from Ryan Fraser. But you can see that the two know each other well. They link up well. And, the counter-attacking style that Newcastle play, a front three of Wilson, Fraser and Saint-Maximin could really cause a few problems.
Yeah. You mentioned Saint-Maximin there. That was my next kind of point to go on to. Alfie, I'm not sure what your opinion overall is of Saint-Maximin. I feel like in terms of...
don't get him started.
Here we go. I'm expecting something good here. I mean, I think Saint-Maximin, has been in a lot of the same conversations as like Adama Traore, in the sense that they're two very entertaining players to watch in the league in the same position for very different reasons. Adama just a speed and strength just monster at times, and then Alan Saint-Maximin can come in and do absolute wizardry on the ball. I mean, I've said it so many times. I'm like, I'm not sure about it, and then he'll do something ridiculous, and it's like, oh wow, okay, fair enough. Maybe I spoke too soon. But overall, Saint-Maximin, what's your opinion?
I absolutely love him. I think this season he always looks like he's carrying a knock this season. He had that game against Burnley where I thought he was absolutely fantastic. But I think this season he's not been as good. But like you say, he's just got that thing about him. He'll take on a man. But when you think he just can't get any further, he somehow finds a way, and he's just brilliant. And especially for a team like Newcastle who need that bit of flair, especially in a Steve Bruce side as well. He does add that bit of excitement to watching Newcastle. But I think sort of he signed that new contract, and is it sort of he signs a new contract and he's stopped performing as well. I mean, hopefully if he can, like you say, like I've said just before, he does look like he's carrying a bit of a knock this season. So whether that's what's affecting his form as much, but hopefully if he can sort of knock on. And I mean, once he gets playing, like you say,
well, he hasn't played since the Chelsea game on the 21st of November. I think he was self-isolating at some point.
Yeah, but I think he is injured, isn't he? I'm pretty sure.
I'm not sure.
I mean,
he did pick up a knock, I think.
Yeah, surely. But I mean, like you were saying with him, the one thing that really lets him down, like anyone will say, is his end product. I mean, like he turns in, he'll take it past 6-7 players, and then he'll cross it in, and you just think, well, I could have done a better job than that. And that's the one thing that disappoints. But it's the same story with Adama Traore. They're both brilliant at taking players on, and they're really exciting to watch. But it's just, you want to see that end product more often.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't know about you, but there's been times where I thought I've looked at him and I thought I can't really put a finger on it, but I feel like he's such an Arsenal kind of player. I don't know why. I just feel like he's someone which I could just definitely see playing for Arsenal at some point. I'm not sure.
I don't know whether he'd be quite good enough for Arsenal. I definitely love him there, but it's just whether he's the sort of player we'd need.
Yeah.
To go forward.
Another winger.
I know. Another winger that's got no end product.
Moving on from Newcastle, we're going back down to the bottom of the table with Sheffield United. Sheffield United, I feel like, starting off a little bit of a conversation about them this season, I feel they were so good last season. They exceeded so many expectations last season that, again, we spoke a little bit earlier. I think we spoke about it with Leicester, of almost when a team does so well in the Premier League, it's almost unfair for fans at the end of that kind of a first initial season, because they maybe have quite high hopes and they're expecting, right, Sheffield, here we go, Premier League mainstays. And then you look at them this season and they do not look in any way, shape or form the same club. And again, there's been a couple of times where I feel like they have been hard done by. They've had some good performances. They've had a good couple of goals against United from McGoldrick. But I feel like Sheffield this season, there's no way of saving them, in my opinion. I don't know what you think about this, Alex.
It's been, disastrous. That's the only thing you can say. I think, the way Sheffield United play with the overlapping centre halves, it was, it kind of took the Premier League by surprise a little bit to start off with. But I just think you're going to get found out playing like that. That being said, I do think they have been unlucky in some games this season. They've been unlucky not to have, what's his name? Jack O'Connell available, who was such, I'd probably call him their best defender. I think they were unlucky against Leicester to lose in the manner they did. I think they were unlucky against Aston Villa. I think they were unlucky against you in some ways. I think they're beyond help now, Sheffield United. I think they probably are going to go down. But I will stick my neck on the line and say they're not going to break Derby's record. I think they are better than that, and I think they will pick up some points. I do hope they stick with Chris Wilder. I think he's a fantastic bloke, a good manager for what he's done for that club. I think he deserves the chance to get them back into the Premier League. But I can't see Sheffield United getting out of this now.
I agree in the sense that they should stick with Chris Wilder. It's whether I think the culture of the Premier League as well, the toxicity of the managers going, and it's just a trend we're seeing now. I mean, it's not long till we talk about the first manager that has gone in the Premier League very soon. That's going to be a conversation that we'll touch on. But I feel like it cannot be overestimated the loss of Dean Henderson as well had on Sheffield. I think it was more of a mentality thing because he was such a great keeper, and obviously there was a chance of him going back on loan this season, but United weren't interested. They wanted to make sure they locked in and secured him to a deal, which I feel the only way that we were able to achieve that is by promising him that he is definitely in the future plans for the club. Because right now we're still seeing De Gea get picked ahead of him after such a good season. So I feel like it was a strict promise to him that he'd be involved in the future plans, which is what kept him at Manchester United, as opposed to maybe going on another loan to Sheffield, maybe Sheffield putting in a bid for him. You never know. But I feel like Aaron Ramsdale was a good signing being brought in. It was obviously coming from a relegated club. It was a bit of a weird one at the time, but I felt like he was a young keeper with legs to him. I felt like there's room to grow. But the loss of Dean Henderson, Alfie, I'm not sure how you feel that has affected them as a club.
Yeah, I think I have to slightly disagree. I think Ramsdale was a bit of a poor signing. I'm not Ramsdale's biggest fan. I thought at Bournemouth at times he just looks a bit. His kicking is phenomenal, and I think that sort of is what he brings to the team. But he originally come from Sheffield United, didn't he? I think he went from Sheffield United to Bournemouth, and then obviously he's come back. I mean, what was he? 20 million around that area, something like that.
Something like that.
And I think for going from Dean Henderson, who last season was, like you say, absolutely fantastic for him and saved them so many times, to Aaron Ramsdale, I think it's a massive step down for them. And I think also their business in the summer, I think, was poor. I think Ryan Brewster for 23.5 million or whatever he was, I think he's a sort of player, not proven in the Prem. He's a sort of player you get on loan, I think.
Yeah.
And I think it was a massive risk, and I think he's still yet to score for them. So I think sort of it is part of their own downfall. And like you say, Alex, touch upon what Alex said, the overlapping centre halves. Like I say, it took them by surprise last season, but they just found out too often this season. And they have been unlucky at times, but mainly poor. And especially with Sander Berge being injured now, I think that's even worse for their season.
Yeah, I think Sander Berge is a very good player. I think he's definitely one of the gems in that team. But you touched on Ryan Brewster as well. I feel like I said at the very start of this podcast how we put Willian as our worst signing of the season, but I think Brewster could have easily have kind of gone into that conversation as well before even seeing him play personally. I mean, I thought it was terrible business. Amazing from Liverpool again, though.
That's what they're good at, isn't it?
Yeah.
Sort of selling mediocre players for millions.
Whoever's, I guess it's an amalgamation, really, isn't it? Of people responsible for their transfer dealings, but it's fantastic.
One thing I am going to say about Sheffield United, and it's a small thing to pick up on, but I do think if any club in the Premier League misses having fans, it is Sheffield United. Bramall Lane, it was such an amazing atmosphere when they first come up into the Premier League at Bramall Lane, and they didn't lose many games there. It was a bit of an intimidating place to go, really, for many teams. Fans right close to the pitch. make some fantastic noise. And I just think playing in front of no fans, it kind of dishampers Sheffield United a little bit.
I think the magic of a team like Sheffield being out of, top flight for so long, coming back in, their fans are already going to be hungry to see that good quality football. And when they get the performances like they do, I'm sure the atmosphere was absolutely electric. So yeah, definitely having fans at certain stadiums for certain games cannot be overestimated, can it? It really can be, they always say, the extra man on the team, don't they? I definitely feel like it does contribute. But moving away from Sheffield, Southampton now. And Southampton, again, probably a team which there's quite a lot to maybe pick upon. Starting maybe with the manager, Ralph Hasenhuttl. I'm not sure how you guys feel about him. I'm a big fan. I think he's a very interesting manager, very, very good manager. Again, very early on in his career. So could be, I see ascension for him. I see him potentially getting quite a few big jobs in the future. But I'll start with you, Alex, for Southampton. How are you feeling for Southampton so far?
Really good. You've touched upon the manager. I'm a massive fan of Ralph Hasenhuttl. I think he is just, typical Southampton. Pluck him out of left wing. No one's really heard of him, like they did with Ronald Koeman, like they did with Pochettino, and he's done really well. I think you got to credit Southampton. Really, they're probably one of the best run clubs in the whole league. Their philosophy of how they sign players and managers, you can't fault it, and I think it's testament to Southampton really. After that, people talk about it so much about the Leicester game last season where they were caned 9-0 at home, and they stuck with their manager and they're reaping the rewards now, and I just think you've got to credit them for that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there was no more pressure than at that very moment for them to think like, right, what do we do? Because everyone was focusing on Southampton at that point. But like you said, I think sticking with him was the right decision, and it's paying off now. A couple of players to highlight. There are more players that I'm sure I've missed the list, but a couple of players which I'm very interested in at Southampton. Obviously, Danny Ings is great, fit and fire and form. He picks up a little knock, didn't he, recently? So that's a bit of a worry for Southampton, I'm sure. But also James Ward-Prowse. I feel like this is a guy, if it could have been a very different story. He could have been taken from Southampton very early on and been nurtured by one of the top flight clubs. And who knows where he would have been now. I mean, he's excellent now. And I feel like if he went to, maybe did get a big move at some point, I feel like he'd be excellent at a different club. I do see him at, someone like a Tottenham, that is somewhere I see kind of going in for Ward-Prowse. But Alfie, Ward-Prowse as a player, do you see maybe a further career path for him, or do you feel like Southampton is the destination?
I think he's definitely, Southampton have done well to keep on to him for so long. I mean, I'd take him at Arsenal. I think he's an absolutely fantastic player. Off set pieces, I mean, every single set piece is almost like a penalty for him, isn't it? And you look at how many goals they've got from set pieces, either directly from Ward-Prowse or from his fantastic delivery. And I think he gets better year on year, and I think this year he's really shone, and especially like I say, Danny Ings as well, massive miss for him. A lot of people saying, can he carry on the form he had last season? And I think he has started the season off really well. I mean, even players like I say, Hasenhuttl was getting the best out of Theo Walcott. I mean, he looked done and dusted at Everton. He's gone on loan to Southampton, obviously his first club, and I mean, I think he's looked really dangerous. He's looked like the old Theo, sort of. He's getting in behind. I mean, that finish against the Arsenal, fantastic finish. He's creating chances, and I think even like I say, Shea Adams as well. He's getting the best out of Shea Adams, a player who couldn't score for Toffee last season, and he's chipping in with the goals this year, and he looks dangerous. I mean, I think it sort of says, I see he's hitting them from all over. He's got confidence. Yeah. And I think that's sort of what the manager's bringing into him. And I think the whole team are absolutely, I mean, like I said, they're taking, I think they were unlucky against City. They're unlucky against us. Chelsea, really unlucky against Chelsea. Obviously, they got the 93rd minute winner, which was more than what they deserved. And they're taking, they're not scared of who's in front of them. They're playing their football, and that's what they've just been brilliant at this season.
Yeah, that's a great point to say, actually. They aren't scared. They are a club you go into, and I think they look at everyone in the Premier League and think, we can do a job here. We can go with confidence. And potentially wrestle some points off some of the big clubs in the league. And I definitely feel like that's going to be something they take forward into the second half of the season. But a more fruitful team to talk about, quite a lot to talk about with Tottenham coming up now. Well, I mean, a good season they've had so far. I mean, Tottenham were really hard to place for me this season. I was really confused. When they brought in Jose Mourinho, I'm well aware of what it's like when you bring in Jose Mourinho from experience, obviously. You bring him in and it's like, oh, wow, hang on a minute. Jose Mourinho's coming to my club. That's crazy. I didn't think that was going to happen. Oh, my God, he's a fantastic manager. Right, let's give him some time. Let's see what he does. You know the reputation he comes with. You know the kind of football reputation he comes with. And you wait and see. And you reap the rewards really early on. And then, obviously, as things progress a little bit more, that's when you start to see the problems. And so far, I mean, this season for Tottenham, Harry Kane and Heung-min Son, I think, are probably the best duo in world football currently. I would personally say that. I mean, you talk about the best trio, best front three in the world. Arguably, Liverpool's in there, but I think Kane and Son this season have been nothing short of fantastic. Alex, start of you for Tottenham. How would you feel about Tottenham so far?
Well, I'm sure Alfie will vouch here. When we did me and Alfie did like a little bit of a prediction at the start of the season, and I placed Tottenham in second place, I think, and Alfie was like, "No, that'll never happen. That'll never happen." But I think I've been, Tottenham are down in sixth at the minute. I don't know how that's happened. They have kind of had a mini dip recently. With the Liverpool game, which I thought they were unlucky to lose. You know, this would be the perfect time to draft Sam in, really, wouldn't it? But like Tottenham have been, a typical Jose side, really. They've, Kane and Son on the counter have just been absolutely unbelievable. Their 2 goals against Arsenal. I'm not trying to rub it in, Alfie. We're just your archetypical Jose Mourinho sort of
argue with it.
Goals, and I think that the chance for the title might have gone for Spurs now. But I think they'll get top 4, and I think they'll win the League Cup.
Win the League Cup. I'll tell you what, this has been something for Tottenham that I've said for years now. I've said to some of my closest mates around me that are Spurs fans, I feel like if Tottenham can win a piece of silverware, they could be unlocked. Like it's been dangled in front of them for so long now, and
it'd be a massive. Even a League Cup would be a massive weight off the shoulders for Tottenham. It
would be colossal. It would be absolutely brilliant for them. I definitely agree with you. So, like you said, I mean, if they can get the League Cup, I feel, and who better to bring in something than Mourinho? Mourinho, that's what he does, and he did it at United.
You'd probably make them favourites for the League Cup with who's left in it. Them or Manchester City, I think it's give or take. But with Mourinho's pedigree, I would make them favourites for the League Cup.
I'd say so, yeah. I mean, I certainly wouldn't want to come up against them. Yeah, obviously, how United played against Tottenham was a different story. I feel like it was half. I mean, everyone was so quick to criticise United and we were awful. Don't get me wrong, but I also think not enough of the commentary was how good they were, and they have done that quite a lot this season. Obviously, Alfie, they're the other side of running for you. They're not the club that I'm sure you're particularly enjoying seeing doing so well. Yeah. But Heung-min Son and Kane, I mean, you got to admire them, haven't you?
Oh, 100%. I think Kane's definitely improved his all-round game this season. I used to be critical of sort of his creativity, but I mean, like I said, this season, I think he's on double figures for assists already.
Yeah.
And I mean, what better player to have sort of finishing off these chances he's creating than Son? And I mean, they complement each other so well. And like you say, on the counter-attack, Harry Kane holding it up, playing it through. And I mean, Son's absolutely lightning quick. And I mean, he can hit him. I mean, that first goal, I mean, who would have thought he's going to hit it there? I mean, the quality that he has is really lifting Spurs. And I think one of the signings of the season is Højbjerg from Southampton, which I actually did say was a poor signing from them. But he really has been sensational. And I think even like the players that have just started, I used to be critical of Lloris, thinking he wanted a brilliant, he was always prone, I thought, to an error.
Yeah.
I thought he was still a brilliant keeper, don't get me wrong, but I think even sort of Aurier at right back, how he's been transformed. I know he gave the super penalty away against Leicester.
I'd actually pitch Reguilon as one of my signings of the season. I think he's been superb.
Yeah. I felt that there's so much to pick up on. I think you two have both hit quite a lot of it. Sergio Reguilon, I think, was a great signing. And he was also obviously at one point looking destined to go to United, but it was to do with the buyback and all that stuff that we weren't interested on. But Tottenham, what our loss was Tottenham's gain. And he's been one of the best kind of additions to that team, undoubtedly. Højbjerg, again, one of the players that I didn't necessarily say it was a bad signing. I just thought it was a bit of a nothing deal. I was like, well,
average signing, I called it.
Yeah,
I thought.
Well, you look at the Højbjerg signing. It was, I can't remember how much it was for, but it was a nominal fee, really.
Well, it was basically they
then went and recouped that money on selling Walker Peters, who was a bit of a bit part player, back to Southampton. So they've essentially got him for nothing, really.
Yeah, I just thought he would just kind of be floating amongst the ranks, but clearly he had a plan for him, and you've seen it being applied now, and he does look like a real mainstay in that team, and he's forcing other players out of that squad. I mean, and one more thing to talk about with Tottenham, I think that's worthy. It does deserve to be said. Is probably Eric Dyer. I think Eric Dyer has been very, very good, and he's been, again, showing flares of what he did early on towards his Tottenham career. And now I feel like at centre-back, is this it now? Is this where he is? I mean, Alex, what would you say with Eric Dyer?
Well, I said when Mourinho got appointed, I think Mourinho is going to be so good for Dyer. I think he's the right person to have under his wing. Both growing up in Portugal, Mourinho being the defensive coach that he is, I thought he'd be a really good influence on Eric Dyer, and I think it's showing now. And I think Eric Dyer gets a lot of stick from England fans, but I could actually see Southgate starting him at the Euros, which I think would irritate a lot of people, but I don't think I'd be too annoyed with it. He's not a flair player, don't get me wrong, but I think he'd just be a solid inclusion in the England squad.
If the performances are coming in, I mean, you can't really argue, can you? And certainly the defence.
I'm sure Alfie's going to completely counter me on Eric Dyer playing for England there, but
I mean, I think playing for England, he has been quite poor, but you can't take away from how he's played, how he's turned it around. Especially, I think sort of the previous 2 seasons, he was poor. But like I say, Mourinho, he's completely turned around under Mourinho, and he does look solid, him and Alderweireld.
Yeah, no,
so I can't take that away.
Yeah, when you do take it to England, I think England's defence in general, England's centre backs are very much up in the air. So we could, if the performances keep coming in, he could be starting for England. Moving away from Tottenham, I said that we were going to be talking about the first manager to go in the Premier League with West Brom. Slaven Bilic sacked. Alfie, I'll start with you. Right decision?
In my opinion, no. Especially after sort of the point at Man City as well.
Yeah.
I mean, another game where I thought they played brilliant. I mean, Sam Johnstone, what a game he had. Yeah. That was one of the performance of the season for a keeper. And I thought West Brom looked good as well. And I mean, you can say as much as you want it was City were bad, but I just think it was a brilliant performance from West Brom. I mean, Bilic, I mean, I don't understand sort of sometimes the sacking of the manager. I know that they haven't sort of probably kicked on as well as they would have hoped, but I just think it's a weird time, especially after the point at Man. That's just what really confuses me at the timing of the sacking. I mean, if they'd have got battered, then I could probably have seen why.
Yeah.
But surely that's a point to build on. And Bilic is probably the right man to build on that point. I mean, he knows that squad of players. I mean, Big Sam's come in. And I mean, yeah, they were down to 10 men, but they've been beat 3-0 off Villa. And I think that's probably sort of a sign. Should they have sacked him? I mean, Big Sam, I think, will probably keep them up.
Yeah.
It's what he does, isn't it? But I still think Bilic would have kicked on. I mean, give him next season, he could have progressed, I think.
Yeah, I think West Brom, I predicted them to go down from the start, but sacking Bilic, I think, was particularly cruel. But like you said, if anyone's going to try and get in and keep them up, it is going to be Sam Allardyce. I mean, Alex, is he up to the job? It's a hell of a job if he gets it right.
This is the way I see it with West Brom. I think the decision to sack Slaven Bilic was made after the loss away at Newcastle. A heavy loss at home to Palace and then losing away to Newcastle. I think in an ideal world, West Brom probably would have sacked him on the back of a heavy defeat away to Manchester City. Mm-hmm. Football doesn't work like that, and they got a point, so the sacking looks a lot more harsh than it was. And they've given him a shoestring budget to work on, and they're not getting the results. Shock horror, but I can see why they've done it. But I do think this squad of players is beyond help.
Yeah.
Even Big Sam. I said the other day, if Big Sam keeps West Brom up, it is without a doubt his best achievement in football. At least he took over Sunderland and Palace in similar positions. But, at Sunderland, he had Defoe to build a team around. At Palace, he had Zaha to build his team around. I don't see anyone remotely close to that at West Brom. The only player who's got that an ounce of that talent is Matheus Pereira, but I think he's way too inconsistent. I can't see Big Sam, even Big Sam, keeping West Brom up this season. I think they're doomed.
Yeah, I mean that Pereira, I think he is one of the highlights. I mean, so far this season, I think West Brom were incredibly unlucky against United. Obviously, Sam Johnston, man of the match in that game for me. I felt like he was absolutely incredible, and Pereira, obviously. It's not until when you really do watch West Brom playing, you see how much Pereira can control from that midfield. If he had the players around him, God, I mean, who knows what he could achieve? But whether that's going to happen at West Brom is a completely different story. They've got January approaching, and they're a newly promoted side as well. So that's another thing to consider, isn't it? It's how much a newly promoted side can achieve in January. But
I mean, just to chip in quickly, I mean, we haven't even mentioned the point at Chelsea. Joe, obviously, I know 3-0 up. I mean, they were playing fantastic. I know, obviously, as a manager, it'd be disappointing against any team to throw away a 3-0 lead. But, I mean, you look at how they can play against some of the best sides in the league. And I think that sort of makes it look even crueler. I mean, like you say, they have had these batterings, but I think that's down to like the Everton game, Gibbs getting sent off for an absolutely stupid decision from him. And they have gone down to 10 men quite a few times. Pereira got sent off the other week. And I think that's what's let them down. Individual player performances at times in games where they were looking like they could have got something from the game.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. They're a side which I think in games they've been hard done by, and you've seen, what a team in that position can do. And it at times it's positive. You look and you see something that you're interested in. Pereira, just again, one of the highlights. Johnston's been a good player. And there's other areas on the pitch which they do have some talent. But I think Alex touched on it. I don't think there's anything which is saving them now. West Brom done. West Ham moving on to now quite a different story with West Ham. West Ham, I think, so far they've been quite surprising. I mean, Alfie, I'll start with you for West Ham. There were a lot of jokes being made around the time, wasn't it? David Moyes, when he was self-isolating and all the amazing results were coming in. But Moyes' West Ham this season, how do you feel it's gone so far?
I generally think they are, like you say, surprised a lot. I think at times as well, they've got points and got wins when they haven't particularly played well. I thought the Villa game, Villa were by far the better team. But, like I say, West Ham nicking the point. I think last night, obviously, losing 3-0 to Chelsea, I mean, it is Chelsea at the end of the day away. I mean, they're not going to probably lose too much sleep over that, David Moyes. But some of the results they've got this season, I mean, going to Leicester and turn them over 3-0. They were unlucky against our lot. We beat them 2-1. But I thought, again, they had chances to win the game. And I think he'll definitely be happy. I mean, at the start of the season, I think West Ham would have been happy with a sort of 15th place finished, really. But I like to say, I think some of the players they've got, I mean, Jared Bowen, I like watching him play. I think he's really kicked on this season. And like you say, they really have surprised a lot.
Yeah, I think Jared Bowen's one of the players I'd highlight as well. I think he was a really good signing at the time. I was kind of surprised that no one bigger was kind of looking at him, but I think it was a good acquisition. But definitely a player, like you said, who has kind of come on and performed quite well this season. Alex, what would you say about West Ham so far?
Well, I think loads of people have actually forgotten, and it's kind of, made the job, people have forgotten how well David Moyes has done. West Ham come into this season in absolute turmoil. Fans were so unhappy that, they weren't forking the money out for players. Grady Diangana went to West Brom for a small amount of money, and then you had the club captain coming out and lambasting the owners on Twitter. And then they lost the first game of the season at home to Newcastle, and you thought West Ham looked like they could go down. But credit to David Moyes, I think he's actually done really well. The 4-0 at home to Wolves was a turning point, and they've just been picking up results steady as they go. And I think West Ham will steer clear of any trouble of getting relegated.
Yeah, I think that puts us on a good point to talk about the final club that we are talking about so far in the Premier League is Wolves. That 4-0 loss to West Ham. Very interesting game to analyse, because Wolves, we said it so many times on the podcast, in the first season and going on into this season of the podcast, Wolves are a weird club. Like 1 minute, they will go out and just look absolutely like anything can beat them. We mentioned, Southampton's confidence. So they can go into games and think, yeah, we can do something here. And sometimes you're like, yeah, Wolves have got that. Wolves have got that, in, with some to spare. Wolves have got that about them. But then there are other times where you're looking at them and you're thinking, oh wow, like what's the answer here? They lost Diogo Jota in the summer. That was definitely a huge loss. But where they've lost him, Pedro Neto and Daniel Podence have stepped up. Two really interesting players. Pedro Neto, I think, looks incredible. And obviously there are other players on that pitch. Ruben Neves, a player which so many people have been extremely happy with over the last few years. And Connor Cody as well, a player which I really like. Connor Cody, I think he's a good player. I think he's someone that I'm surprised hasn't been linked with a move back to Liverpool. He seems like something Liverpool would go back in for. I don't know if that's just me. Plays a bit of a different system to what they do at Liverpool, obviously, at Wolves. But I just feel, obviously, coming from that team originally and a player in particular good form, and Liverpool needing defensive reinforcements, I feel he's someone who maybe could turn a few heads. But we'll start, Alex, Wolves. How are you feeling?
Wolves confuse me so much. I can't put my finger on what Wolves actually are.
Yeah.
They pull out some brilliant results. Beating Chelsea last week. Was it last week? To name one.
Yeah.
But then, losing in the manner they did to Burnley last night, I thought they looked terrible. I think with Wolves, the problem is there's a bit of a hangover from the manner that they exited the Europa League last year. And I think, they've not looked the same. I think, they looked very negative last night. They've looked very negative in games against teams they should be beating. I think Neves looks a shadow of what he's looked in the past two seasons. Obviously losing Jimenez in the way they have is so unlucky. But like you said, they've got players who are capable of filling in that role, like Neto and Podence. And Wolves, like I said, they confuse me. I don't know what to expect from them.
Yeah.
They're such an inconsistent side, and yeah, I think they've been a victim of their own success as well, because we now expect Wolves to be pushing for the Europa League, but I don't think they're going to do that this season.
I mean, you said it yourself. Raul Jimenez was a colossal loss to them, and obviously Alfie, that was in the game against Arsenal. And Jimenez has been someone that I think has been also toted around, especially in the last summer window, around a couple of big clubs poking their nose around for him. And I feel like Diogo Jota going to Liverpool in the summer could have been the start of a bit of an exodus over the next few seasons. And it would all depend on the kind of form they start exhibiting in the league. Because if they started exhibiting more form, consistently getting, Europa League football potentially, we could have started to see quite a few players come into the club. They've got a good manager in Nuno. And, we could have started to see a real turning point. But again, it's a double-edged sword, I think, because if they have that success, if the results aren't coming in, then players are going to start to leave. And would you say that the Wolves are potentially a club at risk of a big exodus of players on the way out?
I'll jump in there. I think, like you say, Pedro Neto and Podence, if they keep playing the way they are, then I can't see why a big club won't come after them. I think they're both exciting players, quick, and they can find the back of the net. And like I said, they've got players. Neves, I think people forget how young Neves is. I mean, he's been around since he was 16, captaining Porto in the Champions League. Like, he's not sort of getting on. And I mean, he could still do a job. Like I say, been disappointing this season. I think along with Moutinho, both been sort of a lot poorer than they have the last couple of seasons. But I think if they do have a poor season, and these players are expecting European football, then there's no reason if a club that is sort of challenging for European football comes in for them, then there's no reason to believe why they wouldn't leave. Yeah. But I mean, sort of like moving on to what you said about Connor Cody, I think this season for Cody, I think one of the main things has been sort of they've switched to this back four. And I think with Cody, he really thrives in a back three. I think in when he's two centre backs, I think like against Liverpool, I think he's more exposed.
Yeah.
But I think the thing is, if they can keep hold of Cody, I think that would be amazing. I mean, you hear him barking orders out all the time. He's a brilliant club captain. I mean,
yeah.
And like you say, if they can keep hold of him, I think that will be the main one. And I think he staying will be a huge sort of boost for the players around him.
Yeah, I'm surprised more other clubs aren't looking at Cody potentially to see if they can tempt him out. Obviously, when you are a club captain, it does make the situation a little bit more personable. But I feel like if you know the form isn't there, he could be tempted. And obviously, being an ex-Liverpool player, that could be the destination maybe that he ends up if anyone was tempting him. I mean, with Wolves, as a kind of like a final point to talk about here, Alex, I mean, where do you see them realistically finishing? Do you see a more upper end table finish? Is it too early to call?
I think Wolves' best hope this season is probably going to be just getting into that top 10.
Yeah.
I think I can't, you know, I think Leicester and Everton, they're going to get the Europa League spaces. In fact, I don't even know how many Europa League spaces you get anymore. Is it 3, 2?
It all depends on the FA Cup and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think Wolves will finish top 10, but I don't think any higher. I do. The thing is, what are Wolves gonna? You know, what do they? You know, the Europa League. I find it hard to envision them kicking on any further than that.
Yeah, it'll be significantly tougher for them to progress further.
And I think playing on Thursday nights last year was kind of Wolves' downfall as well. So it's a weird one. You know, they exited the Europa League to Sevilla in a game they should have won. So yeah, I don't know what to say about Wolves. They're just, like I said at the start, they confuse me so much.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's all to see, I guess. I mean, don't know if you'd agree with that, Alfie. Yeah,
I mean, like you say, I think the biggest getting beat 4-0 off West Ham. I mean, who would have called that? But then, like you say, they go the other end. They beat Chelsea in a game where I thought they were particularly poor until they scored. But they're just a confusing side. But I think they have got a good manager in Nuno, and I think, like I say, maybe they are a victim of their own success, sort of overachieving, you know, getting promoted and getting into the Europa League. You know, it's sort of. Maybe that's why people are sort of looking at them and thinking they're having a bad season, when in reality, maybe they're not having that poor a season as people probably make out.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just kind of where they're supposed to be right now based on the current climate. Well, there we go, guys. That is all of the Premier League clubs that we have spoken about. One last point that I will round it off with before we finish up this podcast for Christmas. I'll start with you, Alfie. Can I have a Premier League winner and can I have your 3 Premier League relegation people? Relegation candidates.
So I'm going to go Liverpool to win the league and Sheffield United. That's a good question, that. I think Sheffield United. I think Fulham. And even though I said that Big Sam might be able to keep them, I think West Brom.
Yeah, I think
I have to go against my own words.
I think I might have the exact same 3 as you there. Alex, what would you say?
Yeah, I think Liverpool to win the league is a fair shout. I don't think anyone's going to stop them. My bottom 3 differs quite slightly. I think Sheffield United, West Brom, and I'm going to go Brighton.
Brighton. But there you go, guys. If you would like to get in touch with us on The Average Pundits, you can always get a hold of us on our business email at theaveragepundits@outlook.com. You can follow us on Twitter at PunditsAverage and on Instagram at The Average Pundits. If you're watching this on YouTube, please leave a like and subscribe, and you can get a hold of us on streaming services as well. And go and subscribe and follow Nothing But Football on all of the accounts. We will have it all posted in the link below. Gents, thank you very much for joining me today.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's been good.
And have a good Christmas, everyone, and we will see you next time.